And welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to the next episode of Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. We're glad to be back for episode 59 of Dragon Ball, which is the Notorious Mercenary, or I think, what is the other name for it that we have here? The World's Greatest Assassin.
The world's greatest assassin, yeah.
So we're very excited to get into it. We're recording this just after that live stream we did about episode 58. So we're going to be able to go right into it. I think we don't have anything else that needs to be said, eh?
No, I think we can just roll right into it.
All right. So we start off this episode with kind of a recap of what happened last time so we can set the stage. After saving Upa and finding his grandfather's Dragon Ball, Goku stays with Borah and Upa in the land of Korin, the sacred land of Korin. And meanwhile, Red has summoned Tau, as we saw before, Tau Pai Pai, the mercenary. But General Blue has also returned with the Dragon Radar, so we're not sure what's going to happen with them quite yet. But we do know that he enters the headquarters, he kills a soldier before he gets in there, and he goes off to meet with Red. That kind of sets the stage for this. And we've already mentioned a couple of things in the last episode that Goku is here in the center, the sacred land, in the west, the furthest point, all of those things in one and finding the 4-star ball here just adds that level of symbolism.
And I love that too. I believe it's Jacob's responsible for founding the Holy Land, right, in the Bible. So it's like there's the sacred land. So these sort of representations connected to the pillar, and that's also like the steeple on a church, right? Because that place where the pillar was raised was the first church. So it's synchronous in that sense.
Yes, serendipitous even.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of sets the stage for what we're going to see. So wow, that is not the right one. Okay, maybe we don't have the right clips. I thought we did. I checked the first one and it wasn't. Okay, well, this is going to be on the fly then. That's okay. I can
Might just have to trim it out.
No, I can do this quickly.
Oh.
Just fill.
So yeah, we are rolling over to Red's war room.
Yeah, so in Red's war room, told you on the fly, pretty quick. Tao explains the cost of his services, which are quite high. I think he says like $1 billion zenny or something for each one. But he's offering a special for his 20th anniversary of being an assassin for 50% off. And so that it's kind of a gag that's thrown in there, but it's also, I think it's in there to show that the celebratory nature and tradition is not lost on Tao. I mean, he does look like a martial artist of some kind, right? He does adhere to some orderly structures, we can tell. He isn't...
right, it's the way that he introduces himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very formal.
Yes. And so Staff Officer Black questions the level of expertise Tao has, but is quickly rebuffed. Tao offers to fight Black instead, and Black cowers in fear and says, no, thank you. And so, but then we do have Blue enter the scene just as that's happening. He's reprimanded for not getting the Dragon Balls, but he offers up the Dragon Radar as consolation for the lack of them. It is accepted because the radar is far more sophisticated than what the Red Rune Army has, but Blue must fight Tao to keep his place in the army.
No,
in a match to the death.
Red sentences him to death.
Well, yeah, but I mean that if he succeeds, he gets to stay in the army. It is a
does he say that he can?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess so. But yeah,
but it's a match to the death. This covers the base anyway.
Yeah, but he says it specifically. He says the punishment for you not bringing back this the Dragon Ball for failing in your mission.
I'll forgive
death.
you if you can defeat Tao Pai Pai in a fight. Right.
And so then he goes, well, the exception to me just putting you to death now, right, is you beat Tao Pai Pai.
Right,
and
which
then
is
I'll know
something
that you're
that,
the most useful tool.
it's funny though because it's something that Red is almost certain he won't be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of sets us up here, and I do want to say that, like we said in the last episode, the garbing of pink and the externalization that we've seen Blue exhibit with the color pink, and his disdain for things that are both feminine in nature and chaotic in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are then embraced and donned by this adversarial spirit here as Tau. And so we can already see by the visual representations, even though Blue has his shirt off, like he's exposed his vulnerability, and that's kind of what he did throughout the deep sea arc, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that he actually grew in a way in that too, but here, kill you is gonna be a little challenge for him.
Yeah, see, I like this idea of this world-class assassin wearing a vestment that represents thematically almost exactly the same thing that Robot did with a vestment of feminine, chaos, death.
Yes, exactly.
It's he wears it, right, as his, almost like that is his school, right? That's his school of worship or of technique or of reverence or representation,
And that's what
or
I'm
he is
saying.
an
He
embodiment
does
of that
still
idea.
pay reverence. He's
Yeah.
not a purely nihilistic spirit, right?
Right. But I just like the way that it continues to build upon that and keep representing those ideas so that we can really succinctly put the ideas against each other, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so we are about to put those together. But before we do need to talk about Goku because he is looking. Wow, wait. I forgot to do it again. All right, on the fly. No, this will take
Meanwhile,
1 second.
Back in the land of Karin, Goku learns about the Tower of Korin. No one has ever reached the top, except for one rumored person. It is said that if a person could get to the top, a master would give them a drink which would increase their strength immeasurably. I think it has a nice animated segment here. I say animated segment because it looks like a cartoon, because they draw it very Western. And you have, I think it shows a knight climbing the side of the tower and coming up over the side. Yeah, here we go. And there's a sage at the top, right? And he's got a pitcher of water. And he pours the water into the knight. I guess I'll just call him a knight. The warrior knight's hands, and then he drinks it. And then he's radiating this pink power out of him. It's like, what would that be? It sets up a really interesting motif, right? Because we see that there's a sacred water at the top of this pole that we've established in the last episode is sort of like the, well, you could call it the Axis Mundi, right? That at the top of the center of being, there is a sage with mystical water that can increase your strength immeasurably, right? If only you were to be able to ascend the ladder, right? To climb up to that space that's occupied, to the real house of God, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's part of that's why it's the legend of this land, right? It's the idea that one can elevate oneself if the strength of spirit is there to achieve that enlightenment.
Right.
And that whole idea that one can do that is kind of embodied here with Upa and Bora, and we're going to see that a little later on and how exactly that transpires. And it's kind of holy how it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
I do want to point out there was, so I was watching the Break the Rules podcast, and it was the one with Jonathan Peugeot and Styx Hexenhammer, and they were kind of going back and forth about religion, and Peugeot posed an interesting hypothetical question to Styx, because Styx had said that he didn't want to adhere to any one religious practice, let's say, and he wanted to study and commit himself to, so that his aim was to study religion, but not to practice it, right? Peugeot posed him the question then, and he said, essentially, there are many paths up the mountain, but you have to pick a path, otherwise you'll never ascend the mountain. And so this idea that there's a path, right, up the mountain, or you could call it a way in which your spirit could carry you up the ladder, up the pole towards higher modes of being, up the hierarchy, and towards, you could call it godliness, right? that idea is imprinted. Well, I mean, it feels like it's imprinted almost everywhere that we talk about these mythological stories, right? But it's so interesting because that is metaphorically what it is, right? Because there's the actual practice of acting in a certain mode of being that supersedes understanding what that mode of being would be, right? And so that's crossing the knowledge and wisdom, right?
Well, having that faith too that it's good. It's good to do that. It's good to better a person.
Right. Well, there's that idea of mapping, right? So think of the dragon radar as mapping a space. And it's like the mapping of the space isn't the important part, right? It's what you figuring out what to do with the knowledge that you've gained, right?
Well, the mapping of the space is important though.
It is, right? The mapping of the space is that, like we had talked about in the last episode, that lateral pull, right? And so the vertical pull being, what do you do with that, right? It's sort of posing that question. It's putting it on its side and saying
the next dimension.
And that's to say, right, that science is not necessarily prescriptive in that sense.
And where, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. And so, where does one go, and how, like,
Yeah.
where should one aim?
Yeah, instead of what is,
And the
what
answer
should be,
is,
right?
And where should one aim? And that's another thing that Goku has been doing this quest, and I think Toriyama recognized it too. Like, he's been doing this quest to find the Dragon Balls with no aim for the end. And so
Right.
he says, "Where, Goku, where should you aim?" And the answer is up. Right.
That's it.
No, I know. I understand what you're saying.
But yeah, I think that it is very wisely represented in that sense. How would I say it? I would call it symbolic, right? Where instead of being metaphorical, because we had talked a little bit before about that, how there's a difference between just being analogous, saying like, oh, I'm just going to insert this trope, let's call it a trope, into my story. That would be metaphorical, right? So you can have like an archetype walk on the screen and do really basic things, but not actually play their role.
This archetype is this.
But it wouldn't be symbolic, right? It would be metaphorical because you would essentially just be referencing something. It'd be a sign more than a symbol, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think that this engages with that process and what it means, and actually has the reverence for what it.
Well, it also has commentary on it, if it's good or not. And we're gonna see
yeah.
how that transpires in the next couple episodes. Whether, and I mean, we don't even know if Goku's gonna climb up this yet, so let's not get too far ahead.
But yeah, just instilling it there.
But
his
adoration,
his
gaze
gaze towards it, right?
Towards it, right?
Yeah,
that's the first inkling we have, and we're gonna get to how all of this culminates. But we gotta get there. So let's go to the next thing here. So the next thing we see is Blue versus Mercenary Tau, and the fight begins. At first, Blue tries to a series of blows on Tau, but Tau dodges them easily, showing obviously that his ability to see supersedes any malice that can be inflicted by Blue. He's seen it already, let's say.
Right. He has mapped him out, right? He already has perceived all of him.
Then Blue uses his special psychic powers to freeze Tau in place, but Tau shrugs off the ability.
Doesn't even work.
He says, "Was that it?" Right, and this is, again, because this super order, right, this tyrannical order, is not something that's going to shock Mercenary Tau. We can now establish here, too, with what he does to Blue, that his malice and the propensity for his spirit to be adversarial far exceeds that of Blue.
I would say that Blue is orderly, where Tau is an orderly spirit. He represents a certain aspect of orderliness in his instantiation. He's a higher level instantiation of order than Blue could hope to be.
Of order?
Yes.
Tau is orderly.
Yes, in his execution, right? He is. You don't see any frills on how he's acting, right? He's casually stands there, dodges, right? He's always relaxed and very like straightforward whenever he's introduced, right? And the way that he ultimately kills him, right, is just like by a single point.
See, my interpretation is a little different. Because
Okay.
I don't know if it's necessarily that Tao is orderly. He is adversarial though, and he's malicious and he's resentful, and that's all expressed here, both by the way that he shrugs off Blue's ability, which we said was that tyrannical spirit, which can instill shock in someone unexperienced with it or unable to deal with it, right? And so, but Blue's defeat by the tongue of Tao, right, is that manifestation of maliciousness spoken into the world, right? That's what the tongue does.
Well, we
It
saw before.
speaks forth that spirit. So really, all that Tao is saying is, if my spirit interacts with Blue in any way, he will die. So that's what the tongue on the temple, right? Because it's also to his brain.
Well, it's also it reminds me whenever Blue's weakness is that he becomes reckless and he becomes angry whenever someone says what should not have been said, right? And then here comes Tao, who literally kills him with a tongue to the brain. That it shows a shattering when he does it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It literally shatters him. That's to say that Blue is so pathological that a very precise, well-directed utterance could completely destroy him.
I see, yeah.
And unravel his identity and literally like kill who he is.
Yes.
And
kill the mode of being which he's inhabiting.
Yes.
Which kills
Not just
body,
literally kill him, but completely just kill him, right?
But yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that interaction with the maliciousness that he can embody here. And so the fight is over. Blue is dead. And so both Red and Staff Officer Black are very surprised that it was so easy for him to do it. Because, I mean, after Blue's performance against Goku, it didn't seem like he was such a pushover, eh? But here's how vulnerable that kind of spirit is to real malice. It's almost the fool, right? It's almost a foolish tyrannical, because, I mean, even Blue went through the Arale stuff and pink poop on a stick, for example. There's another example of pink, by the way, with General Blue.
Yes, this is complete destruction from that.
From pink. Yeah, exactly. And so what happens next is, after proving that he is the world's greatest assassin, Tao is offered a jet by Staff Officer Black to fly him to Goku's location. Tao rejects the offer, saying it would be too slow to travel by airplane. And he's also instructed to gather the Dragon Balls after killing Goku. He says it'll be more, but Red doesn't care because of the enterprise he's built up around them and the resources that he's able to garner through the exploitation and subjugation of his will is vast. So he doesn't really care. Tao then asks to borrow a pillar, and striking at the top of the bottom, he throws it in the direction of Korin, jumping on top of it, and he rides it like a surfboard, which is amazingly hilarious, but awesome at the same time, because it is that it's that
amazing
force of projection, right? It's that will to projection. I'll make my own path. I'll make my own pseudo nimbus cloud, for example.
Right. That's kind of why I was skewing towards this hyper orderliness, because it's like, how would I put it? It's so focused, right? It focuses down.
It's
the
orderly
way that
in the way that like Lucifer is orderly.
Yes. Yeah. Like you would call lawful evil in a sense.
Sure. Yeah.
In that, like, I have my definition of what is good and evil, and I'm following that to its ultimate bitter self-destructive conclusion, right? And so, but there's a certain like focused malice to him, is why I kind of wanted to point that out, because he's not striking with whenever I say that there's no frills to him, right? It's very much like, hello, I'm going to kill you. Simple kill. Boom. He's very efficient in that sense too, right?
And he's the first. This is the first spirit we've seen like that. We've seen Silver, and Silver's introduction in the anime built him up somewhat to be something like that. Like he kills those innocents and stuff, but it's not quite the same. And I mean, White, nothing like this. Even Blue, nothing like this. Blue kills one of his own soldiers immediately. but he has someone else do it, right? He doesn't do it himself. He and there's a reason for doing it. There's an explanation, like we can see all that. But with Tau, it is focused malice that can be purchased, right?
Yes.
So
it's condensed, right?
but
down into like a single droplet in a sense. It's
right,
like
and it's
pure
that,
malice, pure.
And he is disciplined as well. It's that worship of all that malice that is he's able to manifest a path forward for himself towards his target, Goku.
That discipline is a really good way of putting it, right? That sense that he's in such control of himself that he can focus himself to a single point in that sense, and he can focus himself in a direction and ride a pillar, which it's man, to get into what it means for him to ride a pillar is I don't even know if we can yet.
Well, it's not the pillar,
right? But that this is how he gets to where he's going, which is to get to Goku,
but he also, and that's the thing, like he takes, let's say symbolically, the pillar is an instantiation of that reach towards the heaven. He lays it horizontally, right, and rides on it, and he tips over the axis of value and uses it to transport himself to Korin.
He's worshiping his mastery over this plane of life and death in a sense, right? And he's that post-Ouroboros, post-cosmogonic malice now, right? Because this is the knowledge of good and evil. You have a beginning and an end, right? And he strikes the top and bottom of the pillar, and then he turns it, and it's a straight line, right? He rides a straight line. It's sort of the idea of a beginning and an end defined, you could say, right?
And defined by Tau.
Defined by this malice.
Tau's the judge of it, right?
And that, horizontally speaking, right, he is the master of that dimension, right? So he is just like, he takes the idea of the beginning and end and launches himself with it towards
the center.
Towards the center, towards the hero, right?
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, at the hero, we have our great scene here. So, back at the base of Korin's tower, Goku, after eating a green stew, observed the spiritual beings of Upa and Borah. Upa sharpens a spear and Borah carves a figure of wood. After gaining his father's approval, Upa sharpens the spear even more diligently. And afterwards, Goku says he wants to climb the tower because it is worth it to be the best.
He has an epiphany.
Yeah. And it's because he watches this. He watches Upa, who is sharpening a spear. He takes it to his father. His father approves, and he goes and
he gets inspired.
More. Yes. It's an inspiring scene.
Yes.
And it's that idea that he sees too, because we obviously know that Goku has had experiences like this with Gohan, right? We know that this is ultimately Goku's acceptance of that spirit that allows him to look upward. And it is that reverence towards the paternal spirit and the ancestral spirit that elevates the human spirit.
Sorry, I'm just looking up the etymology of inspire. I'm thinking of inspire.
I see. What is it?
Let's see. From Latin, inspire, blow into, to breathe upon, to inflame, to excite, to breathe. And it says to fill the mind and heart with grace, to prompt or induce someone to do something. Huh.
To breathe.
Sorry, I saw spire and I was like, is there something to do with elevation being
right.
assigned to
sure.
spire?
We just wanted to look that up on the fly there. But yeah, I think too that Borah carving that figure of wood, we can't tell what it is, but it looks like an American Indian, so we can assume it's like one of his people or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's to say that his reverence for his culture, right? He's at that level. Borah is at the level, and we can kind of see the cycle already transpiring because Borah is at the level of pupil, student, right? But he's on the path. He's able to ride the Nimbus. He's doing what he's supposed to do.
Goku sees so much of himself in Upa here in this moment because he realizes that he's right there and the 4-star ball is here. And he's like, It's all coming
And now
together
what
in
does he
his
do?
head.
And that's the other thing. He's thinking also, because he's got the 4-star ball now, he doesn't know Tao's on the way. He's thinking, what is he going to do next? And he looks up and he says, it's worth it to be the best.
Yep. He immediately elevates his view, right? He elevates his sight.
Yes. And so just as he does that, and they're all looking at the tower, Upa spots out something on the horizon, and he calls over the others' attention. It is Tau. He arrives with his column saying aloha,
Aloha.
which is amazing because it means hello and goodbye.
So like I was saying,
Yes.
hello and goodbye is amazing for Tau Pai Pai. Much better than the English.
Which he says, pleased to kill you.
Pleased to kill you is funny, but aloha is
Aloha is so
perfect.
amazing. And so he indicates his intention, revealing he's an assassin here to kill Goku. Borah wants to defend Goku. After all, he is the paternal spirit that protects the sacred land, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after Tau grabs his spear, Borah is powerless to move. So let's talk about Borah's spear, right? That's that cultural power, the cultural manifestation of the technological spirit that Borah wields in order to defend the sacred land. Now, it's powerless in the face of the malice here because this malice isn't something that can be overcome by reverence to nature or reverence to a higher being. It understands and comprehends that higher being and actually actively shuns those things.
Right. It acts in defiance of them with knowledge of them.
Yes,
right.
Which makes it even worse.
So like we had shown, whenever you have knowledge of what this space is, you cross over into the threshold of death.
Yes.
As all of the soldiers found out the hard way whenever he just completely obliterated them.
And Goku also realizes here the difference between real malice, right?
Yes.
And so Tau taunts Borah using only 2 fingers to hold the spear, showing how little effort it takes for the recognition of the faults and the flaws in the cultural heritage of Borah to hold it there. However, it doesn't last long because Tau vaults Borah into the air and throws his own spear after him. Goku calls the Nimbus over to try to stop it, but it is too late as the spear pierces Borah, who lands with a thud, dead on the ground, impaled on his own spear. Goku, furious with the death of his friend, charges Tau, and that's where we end the episode.
Many things to say about this last part. Let's start from the beginning.
So
as
we already
Goku-
talked about Aloha, but yeah, go ahead.
As Goku is looking at the pillar, right, the line connecting the heavens and the earth, he thinks, I will climb the pillar. And on that pillar, right, on a symbolic version of the pillar, arrives pure malice. And this level of malice destroys the desire to climb the pillar. This malice is against that mode of being and actively wants to stop it and wants to extinguish it within Upa, right? Actually wants to harm the image of the father. So he makes a joke out of him, right?
With Upa or Borah?
For Upa, right?
Oh, for Upa, okay.
Right,
yeah.
because Upa looks up to Borah to
Yes,
be
yes.
the ideal, and he comes in and makes a joke out of it,
Yeah,
right?
I see what you're saying, yep.
So he corrupts the ability of the progeny, right?
And the adoration for the spirit of the father.
To climb that ladder, right?
Yeah.
To actually get on the pillar and climb up it. And so it is beautifully symbolic the way it plays out, right? The way that he just arrives and says aloha with the context of what he represents, like he's an extension of the pillar right there, right?
Well, and it is to say the reason that he manifests too is that to elevate one's spirit, that malice must be confronted, and that's when it appears, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another reason why Mercenary Tau has to come at this part of the story
Specifically,
yes,
at the same time, and that really makes me think that Toriyama was intentionally trying to do this, right? That he was trying to speak through the way that he was using the representation of these characters and how they arrive, right?
yes.
I think
And
we
so-
saw a video where it was like, Toriyama actually didn't write any Dragon Ball episodes. It's like, okay.
But it is to say too, Tau here is that representation of the unholy, not the unholy trinity. He's not necessarily a liar, but he is that unholy spirit which contends with the hero as the hero tries to elevate the spirit of humanity, which he's just about to try and do.
Right.
And so, right, that's here. And so when Goku charges him, right, we're going to see the clash between the adversarial spirit, which goes against being, and the heroic spirit, which is to redeem.
Which has literally just come into the knowledge of what it would mean to redeem, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, because he's just glimpsed
That's
the
all,
relationship
yep.
between and I want to point this out too, because there's an element of this that I think is really great. So he's just realized by watching Upa and Bora sort of that redemption, the potential redemption, right? Because that's what's been missing from his story, right? With the absence of his grandfather as being really, well, that's why he's chasing the ball, but also what's he going to do with that, right? What's he going to do in the name of his grandfather, let's say? But that aside, this is all the way in the West. And so Goku has now seen himself in someone who is the furthest from his origin as possible, right? So he's gone into chaos and found a representation of himself, preserving the same thing. And he realizes that the world is the same across all of space and unites under one point, right? And that point is what he interpreted as goodness that he learned from his father, and the goodness he gets to see Upa learning from his father. It unites the world for him, and it's almost like it's boom, it's mapped, and it immediately elevates.
It's worth it to be good.
Yes.
That's kind of the realization, right? Is that it's worth it to be good. It's worth it to be the best. It's worth it to strengthen one's moral character.
That is common, right? It's common across the world, and now it's worth it to be good universally as an idea.
Like we were saying, right? It's that idea that now that Goku has the 4-star ball, he sees the potential redeeming of Bora and Upa, because Upa is sharpening the spear, and that spear is used by Bora. We can assume one day it'll be used by Upa. It's that cyclical nature of redemption that the son can cast and give to the father. And Goku has no father figure in that way. And so what is going to happen as we see, and I mean, even here we can see the death of the paternal spirit. We're going to kind of see what Goku does with that after he fights Tau. Right. And that's kind of where we're going to leave off, I think.
One other thing I want to say, because we've talked about how his spear is a technological extension. It's like the best technological representation of I want to expand on that a little bit, because it's very much like the pillar, where they're condensing their potential to do malice into a single point with a spear, right? And he uses that spear, for instance, to fish. So he uses his ability to be integrated on that level to feed himself, to feed his son, to fend off things, he uses it to stop somebody from blowing him up with a grenade when they're sneaking up on him, right? He uses it to focus his will into that point, right?
Well, it's also a cultural thing, right? And the cultural can be seen as a paternal spirit. Civilization is a paternal spirit, right? It's that orderly fashioning, and it's the spear creates order, right? It destroys, let's say, that red ribbon soldier.
But yeah, the idea that it's a pillar, almost in a sense, that it's got a point to it, right? And you're using that symbolic representation in the way that he is. I think that they show his spear over and over and over. Like, they really establish it as being a part of his character, and not just like, oh, he had a spear when this happened. So
he wasn't just spear guy.
No, but he like, fetch my spear, and then he's teaching his son how to sharpen a spear.
Right. We can infer too that it's part of that his people's culture.
Mm-hmm.
His people have lived there. We see on the totem pole, there's all those pictures of American Indians, so we can assume they've been defending this land for eons, for as long as the god has been here.
Right. And we're actually going to get a specific amount of time for that.
Yep. we will in the next couple episodes. But right, so here we leave off. Anything else you want to say?
No, I just wanted to point that out. I mean, essentially also just that mapping element of it, right? The idea of being able to see yourself in the stranger, right? The stranger is an archetype, right? The outsider, right? You see it like in the Bible, where it's like for instance, in Western writings in the Bible, it's represented as like an Ethiopian man. But for Goku, this is the stranger that he finds from the other end of the world, right? And then the stranger is is redeemed and redeems the hero at the same time, because it's the recognition of what unites people, right? And that's so I just wanted to point that out, that's the Axis Mundi, right?
Is that which elevates the human
Yes,
spirit?
the human spirit universally, and not just for your own tribe, but for all tribes, right?
Well, and that's to say that Goku is not only now the hero of
his friend group,
the Dragon Crew over Pilaf. He's not just the hero in Sano's village or Penguin Village
or Kavach.
Right, exactly. But right, and that is to say that is that, and that's where he really adopts this. But don't want to jump the gun too much because we haven't really covered that evidence yet. We were just kind of making the claim right now, so we'll see how that transpires. Anything else you got to say?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed what you heard, please give us a like. We're also on Rumble. Give us a subscribe. If you want to leave a comment, if you disagreed with anything you said, we hope you enjoy these episodes because we really enjoy making them on these particular ones. So hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And we hope you guys have a good night.
I'll never forget the day he showed up. And so, he told us that he was Goku. So we started calling him Goku Black. He looked down on all of us and said he was going to exterminate the human race. I have not only mastered Goku's powers, I have made them my own.